Hi, my name is Ron Parsons. I'm a midwifery educator, and in this video I will talk you through the process of vaginal examination in labour, the possible findings and what they mean. So firstly, why might we do a vaginal examination? Well, it could be part of determining the commencement and the stage of labour. It could also be for a pre-labour assessment, for example, an induction of labour for a medical indication. Remember that whilst this video is going to take you through the findings to support you in clinical practice, a vaginal examination does not trump a holistic clinical assessment, and its findings should always be considered with the whole picture and the whole history, individualised to the person you're caring for. Vaginal examinations are not compulsory, and a skilled midwife will be able to diagnose labour without them. Before I do any examination, I need to ensure I read the notes and establish a rationale for the examination. Remember, this is quite an invasive, personal procedure that does carry a risk of infection, so it needs to be justified. I also need to use the notes to check placental location to ensure that it's well clear of the cervix. Before I start, I need to explain the procedure and I need to gain consent. I should also ask the woman to empty her bladder before the examination, as this is going to be more comfortable for her, and it ensures I can accurately perform an abdominal palpation and auscultate the fetal heart, which I should be doing before every vaginal examination. I need to ensure I collect my equipment, which will include sterile gloves, lubricating gel, an Inco pad and something to monitor the fetal heart with. I'll ask the woman to lie semi-recumbent, as this provides a really stable and accessible posture, making sure that we maintain her privacy and dignity with a curtain and a sheet. Immediately before the exam, I'll wash my hands and apply sterile gloves using a non-touch technique. I'm not going to do that for today's video, just so I can demonstrate with some of the equipment. So firstly, I start with inspection, like any clinical assessment. And I'm going to inspect the external genitalia, looking for any discharge, any inflammation, which could indicate the presence of thrush or perhaps an STI. Look for any varicosities, any genital warts, any lesions such as lichen sclerosis. If I can see any scarring, it might tell me a bit about trauma from a previous birth, and there may be signs of female genital mutilation, which I also need to note. Before I touch the woman, I will reconfirm consent, so she's not surprised, and then I would gently insert the index and middle finger into the vagina, following the anterior aspect of the vaginal wall. I need to avoid contact with the clitoris and anus by tucking in my thumb and little finger, and throughout the examination, I should be aware of any verbal or non-verbal communication from the woman that indicates any tension, any discomfort or pain. If she asks me to stop, I need to stop straight away. She has withdrawn her consent. I'll feel if the introitus is stretchy, if it's tense. I'll be able to feel the angle of the pubic arch. I'll be able to feel if the vagina is warm and moist, and I should think about if the membranes have ruptured, or if there are any kind of risk factors for any sepsis. I may be able to feel a full bowel through the posterior wall, and I could note that because it may impede descent of the presenting part. And I can also note if there's anything unexpected in the limb, such as anything unexpected in the vagina, such as cord or prolapse limb. Next, I need to locate the cervix, and I'm going to assess its position. So, is it sacral or posterior? So that means kind of towards the back. Is it anterior towards the front, or is it nice and central in the middle? I'm going to feel the rim of the cervix and assess its thickness. So possible findings here are that it's uneffaced, it's partially effaced, or it's fully effaced. Now, effacement refers to the thinning and the shortening of the cervix in preparation for childbirth. It's measured in percentages from 0 to 100%. So a cervix that is 0% effaced is going to be thick and long, like this model here, while a cervix that is 100% effaced is going to be completely thinned out, allowing for dilatation and the baby's passage through the birth canal. Effacement and dilatation often happen together as labour progresses, depending on the parity of the woman. A primiparous woman, you will often find that the cervix needs to fully efface before it starts to dilate, whereas with a multiparous woman, this may happen at the same time. I can also assess the consistency of the cervix. So is it going to be soft and stretchy, indicating that we're in a good position for labour? Is it quite rigid, indicating that maybe some more softening needs to happen? Or is it edematous, indicating that perhaps there is some obstruction there? We're also going to use 2 fingers to assess the diameter of the cervical opening. Possible findings are closed. So here is an example of an uneffaced closed cervix. So again, in this woman who's never given birth, we've got a very tight, small external os. Okay. whereas in a woman who has given birth, that external oars might be wider, irregular, it never quite goes back. We could have the findings of admits a fingertip, where we can literally put the fingertip in. We could be somewhere between 2 to 9 centimetres. It could be anterior lip, so this is when the front part of the cervix remains undilated or perhaps even slightly swollen, where the rest of the cervix has been dilated. It's often due to uneven pressure from the fetal head, or perhaps the fetal head has been asynclitic. And then finally we've got fully dilated, sometimes also called 10 centimetres, but it's the absence of no cervix. We're going to feel for the presence of intact membranes. So membranes feel smooth if you imagine feeling a balloon full of water. And possible findings are that the membranes are intact, they could be bulging. If the membranes is reported to have been broken by the woman, we could just say, well, we feel 4 waters. So we feel those waters in front of the head, and it's the hind waters that have broken. Next, I'm going to sense the presenting part. So a head or cephalic presentation is going to feel hard, and we may feel the sutures and the fontanelles. If it's a breech, the buttocks are going to feel soft, although it could feel quite hard, and you could mistake buttocks for a very swollen head if that woman's been in labour for a long time. If the cervix is closed, you're not going to be able to determine any of this. We could feel a shoulder, which is when the fetus is in a transverse lie, the shoulder may present. It's quite unlikely, but it does occur in around 1 in 300 pregnancies near term. So you may feel a very kind of soft, irregular mass. Depending on the dilation, you could perhaps palpate the grooves of the rib. There is no mechanism of birth for a shoulder presentation, so that finding needs to be immediately escalated to an obstetric team, because this woman is going to need some obstetric input. You could feel a face presentation. So in these cases, the face is completely extended and the occiput, so that's the occiput here, is touching the fetal spine. It's less than 1 out of every 500 births. A vaginal birth is still possible because the presenting diameter is a submentobregmatic. We're going to feel a soft, irregular presenting part, and if that labour is long, there's going to be, a lot of swelling, and there could be confusion between a breech and a face presentation. If the mouth is open, the presence of gums or sucking will help you determine a face presentation, whereas with a breech, you're much more likely to see some fresh, thick, almost toothpaste meconium. We've also got a brow presentation. So here the fetal head is partially extended, and what that results in is the mentoverticular presenting diameter of 13.5 centimetres. That occurs in 1 in 1,000 births. And you may feel the orbital ridges, the roots of the nose. You're not going to feel suture lines, and you might feel quite like a bulky. You may also see, if the woman's pushing, little progress. Okay. We're going to determine how well the presenting part is applied to the cervix. So possible findings: well applied and loosely applied. We're going to assess position and attitude. So to do this, we're going to need to assess the fontanelles and the sutures. So you'll always assess if you can feel the posterior fontanelle, case shaped like a triangle, or the anterior fontanelle, that's the one that's shaped like a diamond. You can then look and indicate what's the attitude, and also, so is it flexed, is it deflexed? Continuing to feel the suture lines and the fontanelles will help you determine the position that the baby is lying in. That is if your baby is, for example, LOA or ROA. I won't go into all of those now. It can be difficult to determine, particularly if the cervix is only open a couple of centimetres. If you're feeling 4 waters, you're going to be unlikely to feel the position, because you won't be able to feel those suture lines through it. You may feel moulding or caput. So caput feels like cushioning. There can be varying kind of degrees of it. Moulding refers to the natural shaping of the baby's head as it passes through the birth canal. The fetal skull has soft, flexible bones with these suture lines, which allow some gaps, and it also allows the bones to overlap slightly to fit through the mother's pelvis. Next, we're going to assess the station. Okay, so here I am considering where the presenting part is in the birth canal related to the ischial spines. So if we take this pelvic here, and make sure you don't confuse the ischial spines with the maternal spine or the fetal spine. So the ischial spines are these bony projections on the ischium, which is part of the pelvis. They're located on each side of the birth canal and serve as an important landmark. You're going to have to visualize them. You won't be able to feel them. I have heard that if it's a very slim woman, you can feel them, but you're going to need to think about where they would be and think of it as an imaginary line, and then you're going to assess where the presenting part lies in relation to the ischial spines. Okay. So if the presenting part lies above the ischial spines, imagine with a cephalic baby, gestation is reported as a negative number from -1 to -5, each number is a centimetre. If the presenting part is below the ischial spines, it's reported as +1 to +5. And the baby is said to be engaged in the pelvis when it is even with the ischial spines at the 0 station. And remember, we're also doing the same thing when we are palpating and we're looking at engagement. So you should be able to link your palpation to your vaginal examination in that way, and you can confirm the findings. At the end of the examination, I would withdraw my fingers gently from the vagina. I'm going to observe for any signs of vaginal loss, for example, show or discharge, any blood, any liquor. Remember, we've disturbed the cervix, potentially disturbed the membranes. I'm going to be mindful of any odour, which if it's poor, bad smelling, could indicate infection, such as chorioamnitis. And I'll let the woman know the examination is over, make sure I dispose of my gloves, make sure any equipment, I'll disinfect and wash my hands. I assist the woman in getting comfortable, and I need to ensure that I auscultate the fetal heart rate for 1 minute following the examination, and I should also do it 1 minute before the examination. Okay, I'll inform the woman of the findings now, let her know the implications for her labour and her care. I'll document everything in her notes, and if the woman is in active labour, I'll make sure that I'm documenting everything on the partogram. Okay, so that has gone over how we would perform a vaginal examination in labour. There's lots more that you can look at, that you can read, and I'll link some important resources in the comments. And please let me know if you've got any questions.